so real short one for today. That's what she said. On 5G, is there anything you agree with, cat and light, like the Catholic Church, Zionists, Agenda 21 globalists, or other conspiracies, etc.? This was on the 5G whistleblowers, Richard Lighthouse and Catherine Horton, who exploit individuals that claim to be targeted. And so does this problem actually exist on 5G, etc.? Now I'm going to say a couple of things here. There are problems associated with any technology people or countries or governments especially implement. There's a problem with the equipment suppliers possibly sticking in back doors because they're very notorious for it. And this being used for any sort of infrastructure purposes without... Unless you know how the thing is put together and can definitely confirm that there is no back door to it, always assume there is. The Chinese government's pushing this a lot. But that's about it. I mean, this is technical genre stuff, not any sort of conspiracy theory thing. The Chinese government is notorious for spying on people and screwing with them within their own country and outside. But anyway, we'll get on with it. The frequency range that 5G uses, this is the latest version of it called New Radio. The frequency band range is the one that's kind of been established as being the one that's used, and it's based on centering it at two bands, one above and one below 6 gigahertz. 600 megahertz, which is lower frequency than what's being used, and up to 4,700 megahertz, or 4 gigahertz, 4.7 gigahertz, that is higher than is being used currently. Because these are, if you're not aware of it, that's more than doubling frequency or more than halving frequency. It's more than an octave off. In order for someone to claim these are of any sort of physical damage potential, they'd have to show one or another group of frequencies has some damaging potential. Not be vague about it, not say 5G is numerological, this, that, or the other thing for some sort of evil takeover. On one hand, you have this mostly being spearheaded by companies in China, which by default most of our equipment actually comes from China or Korea or whatever, because they have low-cost labor and they make things cheaply. And that scares people sometimes because when a new technology comes out, unless you have the patents and wiring diagrams and microchip diagrams directly in front of you, or have time to reverse engineer them to see what's going on, it's really easy to stick back doors in hardware. This has been found a couple of times, but not very often. And when it's found, the company that made the hardware is banned by everybody because they don't want to put up with that. But then again, our own government requires that internet providers put in back doors in their facilities and do a giant dragnet and assume everyone should be spied on. So this is a little disingenuous, but okay. But aside from something like that that has a real background in history and technical data associated with it's real, on that hand, we have, on the other end, we have two quasi-experts screaming about how this is all some giant conspiracy and inevitably goes back to being the Jews did it. None of that has anything to do with, what frequency it is, how intense the signal is, whether it's even in use. Finding places that actually use 5G is you look up the map for the people trying to sell you access to it. And it shows a spotty coverage at best. Cell phone service has been around for a long time, and most reasonable people do not believe that it is an overt extreme threat. And again, to mitigate it, which no one wants to talk about in these groups, the fearmongers never talk about solutions. They only talk about fear, because they have to concentrate their effort on fear. If you don't want to be exposed to cell site signals or cellular signals, use a car kit or a car-based cell phone system. You can actually just integrate it in your car, have it be a car phone, or make sure it's done in such a way that the antenna is nowhere near you, which means you use a wired, not a Bluetooth set, wired set. Use a bead magnet. It's a choke. You loop it through twice to keep the radio signal from going from the radio transceiver in your handset to your earphones. Use a really long cord, and then keep the thing not in your back pocket, but keep it in your hand. If you're not aware of this, if you really think this is going to cause cancer, getting cancer of the hand is actually very much easier to cure. All right. Or you could carry it in such a way that the transceiver is literally away from your body in some other way. You could also use a different frequency you don't consider dangerous to act as an uplink to it and keep it on the bike, or keep it in your car, or just have it be in your house. Or just skip the whole thing and have a wired telephone connection and tell the telephone company, no, I don't want any extra features, stop adding shit to my bill, give me a standard landline. None of these assholes ever talk about this. They won't. They constantly talk about being attacked and being targeted individuals, or how a rip in their pants is somehow associated with the Illuminati. None of that solves anything. And that's why I err on the side of, you're full of shit. Their behavior doing that is on purpose. It's supposed to elicit this reaction in me and any normal person. Anybody who goes on about Agenda 21, which doesn't have anything to do with what you're talking about, or Zionists, or the Catholic Church, or whatever, doesn't know what's going on. Now, every church, every religion wants to overrule everybody and rule the planet with an iron fist up our butts and do a whole sorts of terrible things. I'm an atheist. I believe that firmly. Can't prove it. Okay. A Zionist is just another code word for people. Saying that is a code word for yelling the Jews did it and screaming anti-Semitic shit. You don't get around that. If you're against the government of Israel, point to something the government of Israel did. Yes, Israel is using 5G. They're not excluding it. No, they didn't give themselves a giant long lunch break on 9/11 either. None of that shit was ever true ever. But anyway, as far as, I'll just touch on this. Agenda 21 is a bunch of pie-in-the-sky requests and goals that people set in some stupid meeting someplace, doesn't matter if it was the UN, that has no binding effect. It's a group of maybe 60 people who wanted to change the world. Okay, so your giant, evil, incredibly huge, tentacles everywhere conspiracy of 60 people is going to overrule every fucking government. And who are the individuals? Oh, well, we don't bring that up. People who bring up Agenda 21 won't tell you the names of the people who made this assertion. They say it's secret or something. It isn't. It isn't fucking secret at all. It was a chaired group of people who are the main organizers, and their faces and names are on the net. And they have literally no power over anybody. But churches want to have power. What about the Jews? Well, Judaism may want to have power over the planet. Sure, I'll throw them under the bus. But the government of Israel doesn't. They just want to keep their own borders taken care of. You can decide that I'm full of it or I'm a shill or whatever, but you have to show proof that they're actually doing something. Yes, the Mossad exists. Yes, so does the CIA. Yes, I think the Mossad is a bunch of assholes. Or is it Mossad? Is it something else? But anyway. But yeah, Cat and Mr. Light are irrelevant data sources because they keep going on and on about things that have nothing to do with it. Unless they talk about milliwatts per meter, or wattage designations, or effective output power, or frequency range, or wavelength, and don't change their story every 5 minutes, and they stay on topic, they'll be taken seriously, which means people like me will evaluate them and say, well, you don't know what frequencies you're talking about. They can't handle that. They have to introduce this other shit, you know, globalists and New World Order and that sort of stuff, so that they can distract people. It's literally the curtain. It's literally the Wizard of Oz meme. And that's why they're immediately thrown away by anybody reasonable. And that's the problem that does exist. Their entire existence is based on you not actually solving a problem and needing them. Just like a religion saying, you'll always need us because you can never get rid of evil. Because evil's too vapid of a concept, by the way. As for Zionists, no, they didn't do it. As for Agenda 21, that's a bunch of people trying to solve a problem and they can't find their ass with both hands. Anyway, again, I'm going to repeat some basic ideas. The current iteration of 5G, called New Radio, 5GNR, or GNR Not So Lies, is from 600 megahertz to 4.7 gigahertz. Jumping gigawatts. But the thing they don't talk about is it uses lower power levels, and because the frequencies don't go through things very well, they have to be line of sight. So they use really low power stations and lots of them. And they're only going to be where you need them, which means instead of being able to be within line of sight of a tower a mile away out in the forest, you're going to have to be right at the rest stop. It won't be as good a coverage for some of the data transfers. You'll be relying on old cell phone communications because they can be picked up over a long distance, including from an airplane on 9/11. So if anything, all the 9/11 truthers should welcome 5G because then they can say, see, it can never work now. Like that means a damn thing. But anyway, is there anything I agree with the two people making assertions? They could say something factual once in a while. That's not relevant. That's, by the way, if you're not aware of it, that's a false dichotomy kind of thing too, or whatever it's called. Just because these stopped clocks are right once in a while doesn't mean I have to agree with the rest of the time they're wrong. And the Catholic Church, Zionists, Agenda 21, globalists, and other conspiracies are not involved in 5G because everybody talking about it won't talk about the subject. 5G, its frequencies, the power intensity levels, and actual layout, and whether anything's plugged in yet. They ignore that. Why? Because then they can't win a goddamn argument. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.